Another massive match here at the Gold Team League. Fr0zen versus Brox. Fr0zen, I think everybody watching this broadcast will be very familiar with. Second at the World Championships. He managed to get the ticker tape as if he had won it. But Brox, if you've been paying attention to recent Masters tours, is also becoming a massive name in his own right. He reached the top 8 in Bucharest and followed that up with 3 6-3s in a row. And just churning out 6-3s amongst the top 300 or so players in the world is not easy going, and Brox seems to make it look that way. Fr0zen has lost his Demon Hunter, as we've seen almost everybody do. Brox has had his Priest banned, and this is something that Team Liquid aren't scared to do, is to experiment. Fr0zen's warrior deck, for instance, is a control warrior. Then it's Highlander Mage and Galacon Priest. They brought the full-on control package, and explains why they're banning out the Priest in this last hero standing format. They're just gonna line up and beat things the slow way. And what more would you expect from a team that contains a Bunny Hopper, of course? Just kidding, Bunny Hopper is awesome. He just happens to take his time sometimes, and so you should. Anyway, game number 1 is underway. It is the Warrior versus the Mage. And the problem you get as Warrior here, and Warrior is favoured, is you don't know what your clock is. So against Druid, you know they're going to ramp on 4, you know they're going to play a Mount Seller on 7, and you have a good idea of how long you've got to do the damage. But against Mage, there's removal spells that really get in your way. There's secrets that can really mess you about. You're never quite sure what the clock is. That being said, Brox has the easiest of basic strategies here. It's just Tol'Vir into Rampage. It's why you play Tol'Vir, is this opportunity that comes up sometimes. Notice that Fr0zen didn't challenge this with a Swamp Ooze. That would be a thing you do in a lot of decks, even if the opponent has weapons. But in Warrior, if you don't kill their Ankar in particular, but as well as their Livewire Lance, you can get into a world of trouble. So Fr0zen choosing to keep back the Swamp Ooze, and you can see he's thinking hard, which means I think he's happy with the decision, but he wants to keep an eye on the decision, make sure it stays right. Brox just taking his time, taking his hand off the mouse. That's often something that players who are used to being a bit hasty do. He's just sitting back and looking at the screen. Make sure he doesn't just pick up a card and play it, because it's very easily done, especially when you're drawing from the top of your deck. Later on, you see you've got a card you can play, and the one you draw is obviously better. And if you're not careful, you don't process all of the options, and you end up making mistakes because of that. So Brox is a no hands-on mouse gamer until he has to be. Not to be mixed up with no hands gamer, who has recently become a very much deserved GM in the Americas region. Fr0zen already in a bit of a spot, and that's what Warrior does when you play this Tol'Vir version. When you get this early start down, if he gets Mercenaries down next turn, which I believe are still 3/3s at this point, then it's almost looking like turn 5 box and hope. Looks like an auto copy, but you've got to work out what this ooze means. Is it a desperation ooze, or is it the start of trying to kill everything off? Don't see a world where you get more damage in by playing the weapon first. Usually weapon first is good, but I think here 2 5/5s is the best you're going to get. And I guess Brox has to work out the world where he gets an Inner Age and gets a 12-point burst with Kor'kront and Mercenaries. I don't think that matters, but he just wants to double check with himself as much as anything that that's the world he forfeits if he makes this decision. Are you comfortable with making that forfeit? I think you are. But, yep, opponent down to 20 already, and no way of removing any of these minions. Could be a rapid start here for Suning. Conjurer's calling your own minions straight away in a hope that something will happen. actually conjures calling his opponent's minions. That's how much trouble he feels he's in. Is that right? I mean, I think it's right. This is a horrible... Yeah, this is just a massive low roll. He ends up making the minion actually a better shape for Brox than it started, but it could have come up with 2 2/2s or something like that, which would at least give him Fr0zen some outs somewhere. Let's see if he plays Blizzard, for instance. Let's have a look. Because now we're going to get a chance to look at these decks much longer. Of course, this game's nearly over. You hear the clicking? That's me clicking around, looking for Blizzards. There is no Blizzard in here. I think it's called Snowstorm when translated, which is pretty obvious, really. So looking at 17, so as it's not lethal, you equip the weapon first. Direct damage always welcome, just in case taunts get in the way. I don't think it's going to matter in this particular game. Has got the option to shoot down the ooze, and will still have space to play other minions. You like to have a board space in this deck for skippers or charge minions. Hope that China have the same disconnect system we do. It looks like we do from my understanding of the 2 things you can read on that page. Oh, Chinese casters. And WTY Bill was one of the casters there. He's also the liquid coach. Just caught him there. Fr0zen going with the box. Can it save him? There's a good chance of saving him, but he's probably just dead next turn to Korkanoli anyway. Brox just sitting back and enjoying the show for now. Oh! Well, you just blew yourself up. And he waves! Brox with the little wave! Goodbye. You're dead. I love to see it. Absolutely wonderful. Just waiting for this to finish so Fr0zen can explode. And it's 1-0 to Brox. Getting it done with the warrior, which you've got to feel might just go all the way. But priest and their own control warrior should be at least some kind of stumbling block here. Have a look at Brox's build. He's playing the Tolvirs in this warrior. It does have Grom and does have double Korkron, so pretty good build, but no egg and no green skin means that Fr0zen for me is reasonably well favoured as the priest. Interesting looking hand. It's going to lead to decisions. Anytime you pick up the mercenaries and the inner rage, you have a decision to make very early against priest. You can try to get a good early board and hope it doesn't get blown up, and it will quite often just stick there. Especially if you can generate exactly 4 attack minions, so you don't get Shadow of Death and you don't get your things stolen and so on. But also, of course, you can go the other way and try and set up the combo finish, which is in the region of 18 to 22 points of damage, depending exactly on your cards. Now he's got a decision to make. Sky Raider on 1 would have been lovely. But the problem with going for the combo is you end up with these 2 cards stuck in your hand for the entire game up until that point, so you're delivering a lot less damage, which means that your combo might, even if it's doing 22, might not be enough, especially when your opponent starts throwing taunts and things in the way. And Brox is kind of making that decision now to some extent. He plays the Armor Smith now. Part of the plan is just to inner rage it and copy it next turn and go for super beats. But I think you can play the Armor Smith without having to make that decision, spending all your mana and at least inflicting a point a turn. Fr0zen with his own decision to make now. Play the Sethek and just challenge the board. And the problem with this, there's no problem, it's a 2-3 on a fairly empty board. But you don't really want to play your Apotheosis too early as the priest. You want to use that lifesteal part of it to actually get the maximum from the card. It's not really about the buff. I mean, sometimes it just buffs out of range and you win the game because of it. But in general, you're looking to swing the game when you're down to, I don't know, let's pick a number. Let's say 18 health. You stick a minion and then you Apotheosis it. You hit your opponent for 6 and they can't kill your minion and you're healing for 6 all the time. And you're back at 30 because they have to trade in. And the game is over. So what Brox needs is his code. He's hotting up, not cooling down at this end of things. Are you scared of this thing? Are you really? Do you care? I don't think you care. Coin Fate Weaver is a definite possibility, but if you don't care, you can wait another turn. Keep the coin for a time rip in case of accident. I think I prefer that. Like double rampage or something. You just don't want it. It's almost certainly not there, but you just don't want to risk it. I think this is a do nothing turn. Going all the way back to turn 2 where Brox has chosen to play this. Curious to see what Fr0zen does though. Actually heals his opponent to turn off Battle Rage. I assume that's the thank you, but I don't know. So in general you don't mind the opponent being injured, but if they've got an injured minion as well and you can do nothing about it, a Battle Rage for 2 isn't huge, but you don't want to be letting it happen in case they have got a bad hand and need to cycle. So I do like that heal. When Priest wins, the 2 damage will make a difference so rarely. Very happy to see how this went down. And Fr0zen's still not really facing anything that's going to scare him, so now we might just see... I'm going to see the shield. Makes sense. Plenty of ways to deal with this, but picking the right one's a big deal. Fate Weaver, of course, doesn't reduce cards yet because no invokes have happened. There's me thinking it's fine. He's played dragons. What could go wrong? May have watched one too many mage games today. Well, oof. And you can play a Fate Weaver and waste the removal. It's not like playing against Rogue, where you're absolutely desperate to get a long, drawn-out Galacrond with reduced cost cards. This is just a warrior, which you have to fend off for a shorter time period. Cleric of Scales, just to go digging for breath, might be a thing to do here. It's a bit of a waste of a breath, but people say that about my casting. It's never been a big problem. Slowly but surely, though, this awful assembled unit of absolute nobodies is just chipping away. And I say that you don't have a green skin in this deck. Well, when you find one, you do have one. I should have commented on it at the time. You can see the difference it makes, what I looked through at the start to see the build. Green skin is just absurd, and being able to turn it into a real card is also absurd. 6-3 is actually awkward for the priest right now. Penance will soon sort it out. So would death, but not really as efficiently. Yes, it's the same mana cost, but you want to save that for something else. Like a brute later on. Would like to see more of Brox going forwards, I think. He has a very good future in Hearthstone ahead of him with, well, it's not even a future, he's here, he has arrived. To see Chinese players playing in the Masters Tour events, because obviously it's quite difficult for them a lot of the time, but with the online circuit as we have it currently, a few of them are getting to show their ability a lot more, although Brox has already been travelling. Just a name to remember. So what you want to do is take the Apotheosis, but Fr0zen so far has been unable to stick a minion to put it on. That said, he's also not really tried very hard. He's kind of let this attack unfold in front of him with the calm that only a strong player can do. And he roped that into a Thought Steal and wasted 2 mana, just totally wasted it. I'm assuming that there's a little bit more lag to the server they're playing on than usual. I assume they're playing on the Chinese server. And that can mess with your instincts a little bit. We already saw a 5 or 6 second disconnect in game 1. And Fr0zen is typing to somebody, but it's harsh to say it, but if you're playing at that regional disadvantage, don't let it happen. You know, you've got to let the disadvantage filter through. Only use a little bit less time each time. Now this is the issue here for Brox. Needs to make sure that nothing is alive on board for Fr0zen at the end of the turn. Remembering these are 6/8 brutes. But if something's alive, the Apotheosis is the comeback I was talking about. As it stands, Fr0zen in a world of trouble. He can play the Pyromancer and put Apotheosis on it. He'll get a lot of health back. That's a really important pickup. And he can go mental here. Absolutely nutty. And look at this health coming back. Injuring 9 minions, so gaining 9 health, and then doing it again for 5 more. Clears the board up. Fills his health up. And gets 2 troublesome minions into play. And the 2 missed mana of last turn. Yeah, there's a sigh of relief. It's like, thank goodness that mistake last turn didn't matter. Fr0zen, of course. We don't see as much of him as we used to. He's still playing in America's Grandmasters and actually got one of the highest win percentages, if not the highest of all players. I know at some point in the season it was the highest of all the Grandmasters in all the regions. So he slips under the radar a little bit these days, partially because he plays in China a lot. Partially because we don't really see him streaming like we used to. But he was a player that was extremely good on ladder back in the day and converted to tournaments rapidly along the same sort of time that Muzzy was doing the same thing. Both of them are famous for getting incredibly high ladder finishes. And I think that Fr0zen, again, because of that slight lack of exposure to us these days, probably doesn't quite get the recognition that he definitely deserves as one of the top players in the world. So he's dealt with a lot of the issues, but these bombs are another issue, and now he also has the problem that he could just be dead from hand from his opponent at any time. So Fr0zen will absolutely be looking to heal back up as much as possible. Here he goes. Brock's not happy with this. And this is a very typical way that Priest wins this. Well, it's not quite over yet. One of the bombs hitting for 4, not good, but you'd expect some damage from it there. Now we have to keep our wits about us. That's 9 damage from hand alone. He's played at least one mercenary though. And this is where it gets awkward as the warrior. I think we'll see the 5/5 played. The big old whelp, which is weird because it's like baby dragon or something on my lists. Which makes it sound smaller, but of course they're both correct descriptions. But yeah, he needs to present some boards here. And he would love to be able to do something to this dragon that doesn't involve trading into it, so he doesn't put Fr0zen back up to absolute full health. Looking like that's not going to be an option though. So has to just accept it. Try to get it done with the bomb, but costs him another card because the bomb did not go where it wanted to. I think it was correct though to take the chance to save the card. He could have gone the other way and guaranteed a bomb on board, kept himself a 1/1. Actually no, he needed the 1 damage, so he couldn't even have done that. Pardon me. Fr0zen. What did Fr0zen get? Not a lot. Sort of irritating turn that you get sometimes as priests. Well, you don't get to do a whole lot, but you kind of don't mind because your work here is done. And now we're going to have this weird phase where Brox tries to chip through a little bit of damage to maybe get a combo kill. And Fr0zen just has all the answers. So bear with it for a moment or two. It doesn't necessarily mean that Fr0zen has won, but when the warrior health total starts to go down a little bit lower than this, they end up having to fight for their own survival as well as pushing damage, and that's when the pressure becomes too much for this warrior deck. Still the option, yeah, you get these lackeys, and if you get yourself a big dragon or something, you can get back into the game. But Brox doesn't get the big dragon. Just gets himself a random 2-drop, which is going to probably shoot the 1/1 because that's how the world works. Actually, either ping here from the Spitting Camel is just horrendous. Sort of forces Brox to make a decision and go wide. Soul Mirror, but is it good? Or do you just want Fr0zen? What do you want here? All options seem good. And none of them seem great simultaneously. The Soul Mirror with the double penance available feels like it's going to get a lot done. Instead just decides to blow up the board the old-fashioned way. But this way, I thought didn't make the board, but with Fr0zen, of course it does. Ordering correct as well, so all the buffs will go on his side of the board. Of which there were none. And that's game number 2 going to Fr0zen. I mean, we can talk about this game a bit longer if you wish. And Brox might make me do that. But that's game number 2 going to Fr0zen. Fr0zen definitely looking a bit disturbed or distracted. Maybe he is getting slightly bigger issues than I was giving credit for on that turn he wrote. Like Fr0zen webcam now. Brox looking if there's any way at all he can even stay alive here. I mean, he can trade the cork on into the 2-3 and he will be alive. play the Armor Smith and he can get the Warmaul Challenger to gain him a little bit of armor and kill something, he would be alive. But he understands, as I do, that yeah, you're alive, but you have a 0% chance to win the game. And he doesn't want to be here all night. So wants to get on with the third game of Hearthstone. It's one apiece. And the Priest has done its job. Can it go further and take down the Demon Hunter? If he does win this one, I think that Fr0zen is in a fantastic position. The Priest versus the Mage. You force the Mage to be an aggro deck sometimes. And Mages are not built to be aggro. They're built to traumatise you. But the Priest is better at doing that job. Obviously the Breath, a massive, massive card here for Priest against the Demon Hunter. Doing 2 damage. If he can draw a dragon. Oh, he doesn't need to draw the dragon. He only needs to damage his opponent, not his own stuff. But Brox hasn't drawn any stuff. So this Breath of the Infinite that was looking forward to blowing up a load of 2 health minions is just not doing anything for now. So then the question arises, do you want to play your Sethek just to put 2-3 on the board? The upside is that you have a Sethek on the board, which you might be able to get extra things from next turn, extra spells. The downside of it, obviously, is it can just get killed and then you don't have one anymore and you waste some value. Sometimes there you see people renew just to get a spell. But health is at a premium. Fr0zen's going to use that when either a minion or himself needs it. Plus it works well with his Sethek in terms of drawing some more cards as well. Brox weighing up the merit here of using the coin to get a 4-3 into play. The downside is pretty big because it means his Warglaives don't come down on curve. It also means that his Adept wouldn't get the damage in. But weirdly, this tells Fr0zen that there's a Warglaives in hand. There's no reason to attack face there if you don't have the Warglaives. But if you do have them, you attack again on turn 3 and then you coin into your Warglaives on turn 4 and then you play your Adept on turn 5 after you've attacked with your Warglaives. Fr0zen can make some pretty serious reads about the hand here. They're not hard guaranteed reads, but he knows what's going on here. Sigil Runner feels like it might just be bait here. You want to play your 4-3 and just get on with the life. Yeah, you lose a card from the Sigil Runner. You'll find a way later. Work it out. In the meantime, you want the Shadow Weaver just doing its thing. Being a 4-3, which is a massive card for a card with such a powerful ability. It's out of range of the Breath. It's out of range of nearly all the removal spells. And the best Fr0zen could do is try and get his own version of it. So Brox changed course a little bit last turn. Didn't attack, so now does have the option to just coin out the Adept instead. He can put his face and the 2 1/1s into his Mind Flayer and then kill it off with the Adept if he wants to go that route. But he's decided this is the point where he wants to use his slicers to maintain this board. He's valuing the 1/1s pretty highly. And that makes sense to me. Fr0zen should not be able to deal with all of this board the way it's set up. And so those 1/1s are likely to do 2 or 3 more damage. This is what the Sethek was saved for the value on the turn where Fr0zen chose to kill things. Just cycling here. Also get to see the renew. The way he waited on this, seeing how much value he's getting out of this. It's what the best players do. Get something out of every card. But when it's time to get nothing out of a card, they do that as well. Decent options. The breath makes the most sense. To me at least. Nice straightforward turn here. He's been planning around what to do with this since turn number 2. And so, absolutely confident in what he wants to do here. Clearly it looks good, but also he had already assessed that was the play a long time ago. And Fr0zen in grave danger here. A lot of things going Brox's way in this game. Fr0zen's still able to clear stuff up. Time rip now, and then next turn he's got the breath, which will get rid of any overseers that may appear. Sigil Runner not being able to draw cards, a little bit irritating. But even this nothing that he's going to do now is 6 damage. And yeah, I think that I would play the Overseer here. I would not expect my opponent to have the breath. You are wondering a bit about what is Fr0zen doing, what does he have? But he's left up bits and pieces throughout the whole game so much that you have to... You're not hoping, but he's giving you decent cause to believe he might not have the breath. I think if you go through it and know the hands, you can see that he can have it, and obviously he has got it. But I think this was a logical thing to do. And anyway, if he's got it, what are you going to do? You're never going to get it and him to play it until you give him good cause to anyway. So Fr0zen on the cusp of turning this around. Still has a breath and a death. A Galakond, although it's not a very good Galakond. Handful of things. Brox needs a skull or some damage, I think, to just get over the line. That might be enough to be relevant, like big time relevant. Obviously it's relevant. So how much of this hand do you want to commit? And what do you want to do about this annoying 1-1 that can have an Apotheosis played on it? I think what he would like to do is re-equip and play the Sigil Runner. So I think that's going to be the plan. He's going to play the Battle Fiend, take out the 1-1, then play the other Warglaves, which does carry over. The ability says your next attack, blah 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 words. And then you get to play the Sigil Runner. You get to have a reasonable sized Battle Fiend in play, and you've done some damage. And you're pushing towards a much needed extra card. Because you need cards now, you don't need the value later, you need them right here, right now. So it's a kind of setting up lethal, although if this is lethal, good luck. There's as many ways as you like to clear this up. You probably just Shadow Madness a Sigil Runner and trade in. Seems to be brutally efficient. Yeah, and Fr0zen's looking at that because he went straight for the shield. Which would make sense because you get to see what you draw, or what you generate, however you want to word that, before you play your Shadow Madness. Would be dead to some specific bits and pieces. Altruist type, Altruist Cane outs, I guess. Not sure how much Altruist costs here. We know it's pre-nerf. I think the I think Ultra still costs 4. I think it was nerfed earlier than the others, but I might be wrong on that. Alright, draw some more cards. Three, 4. It's not lethal. There's too much going on, but... Do you want another card? Do you want to put something on the board that can attack anyway? So you want to get the mage into play, the battle mage, because that hasn't got charge and has no way of doing immediate damage. What do you want to go with it? You want Kane to be kept back in case your opponent plays a taunt. So that's down to, do you play Adept or do you draw another card? And this apparently is the answer, and it feels right because it means that you can get through for one more attack if your opponent lazily plops a taunt down in front. But he unlazily plops down a Galakron instead. Still a lot of damage coming in though. Chaos Strike. 6, 7. I think that's second slice in his hand. In which case he's one short, right? He's got 5, he can attack, makes it 6, he can attack with Kane. That's 9, so if it's second slice, that's 10. So what do you do? Oh, well, it's Twin Strike, so it's just lethal. Okay! Brox having a moment there. Yeah, and I thought for a second it might be some BM, but he's shaking his head. It's like, wow, I nearly missed that. How did I nearly miss that? Wake up, yeah. That's always slightly concerning when you do that as a player. I just assumed from how it was played that it wasn't that. So, interesting. Okay, Fr0zen with the warrior. This is a different kettle of fish. It is not your common or garden regular egg style warrior. It is a more controlling version. But seriously, the cards are largely the same, except you have far more removal, which is even worse for the Demon Hunter. Get the exact list up. It does have a Dragon Queen. It does have Zephyrus. It does have Elysiana. Presumably because we do see this deck from time to time, and neither deck getting a victory is definitely a thing that could happen. So Elysiana-ing for victory does make some sense. Wow, this hand. So are you coining one is the first question. I think the answer is yes. Second question is which one? Do you want to go double Battle Fiend into next turn Mage and attack face? The trouble is that if you get blown out, you just lose the game, and risky skippers are a thing. I like it. I feel the same as Brox seems to feel about it, which is this is the right play. I'm not sure that I'm happy with what the right play means. He does have the saving grace of having the skull though, so he can, if he can distract Fr0zen for 3 or 4 turns, especially if he draws into a curve, which he's likely to do now, then by the time he runs out of stuff, either Fr0zen will be dead, which is quite unlikely, Or Brox will have Fr0zen down to quite a low health total and Skull into a load more cards, which is a lot less likely. Because one thing the Warrior does struggle with a little bit in the early game is the card draw. Got to be very specific how I word all that, because obviously later on it says skipper, make some things, battle rage, draw the cards, do the things, win the games. But just in the early turns it takes a little bit of setting up. Fr0zen nods. Like, the Elysiana is almost certainly the last card added to this deck. I imagine he talked to his teammates about it. They've said, yeah, let's do the Elysiana thing. And then he comes up against Demon Hunter in urgent need of some removal and just picks up Elysiana. That's what that nod was about. It's like, yeah, of course that happened when we weren't sure what to do with it. Weapon helps him a lot. It's going to allow him to use this Blade Storm in the future. So if he takes down the 2-1, which I expect him to do here. Okay, so I guess that telegraphs things. Sure. So he's going to do it this turn instead. Just set everything to 2 health and Blade Storm away. The way that I wanted to do it would have been a bit of a telegraph. Oh, he's drawn another Kobold Lackey. This might change his plan. He currently has no way of dealing with an Adept. So he's trying to visualise, does the world exist where I get to Blade Storm away a 6-4 on an empty board? Or is there always going to be some annoying thing in the way? Yeah, Brox isn't impressed with these lackeys, but he can't see the hand. Oh, he's drawn his own bit of fortune here. That's a super relevant piece of fortune, but Fr0zen's vision is correct. He is able to get the 6-4 on an empty board. Do you want to Armor Smith? Apparently no. Was an option there to gain 4 armor. But he gains 2 anyway and still has an Armor Smith in hand. Especially with Risky Skipper being picked up. We'll never know what would have happened had he not picked up the Skipper. Reasonable pickups for Brox. It's more damage, more card draw. I don't know it's what Demon Hunter does, but he's drawn the right mix there. So it looks like Fr0zen seriously considering getting some armor here. But one thing we've seen from Fr0zen, actually you can get some cards as well. One thing we have seen from Fr0zen is this ability to be very greedy in a sensible way. All 3 games so far we've seen that, well all 4 if you count this one. I guess game 1 we saw nothing, he just exploded. But leaving his options open for how to do this. He's expecting to Titanic Lackey, but maybe if he had drawn Sky Raider, he'd have gone the other way. Either way, this all makes sense, getting cards. And now it's Brox that's starting to run out of a plan. He could definitely still get a load through, actually. Warglaves, Adept, Sigil Runner. Yeah, you get the Sigil Runner into the play. Chaos. So actually, I'm just naming all the cards. I hate it when I do this. He can play Warglaves into Chaos Strike. He can then kill the 2 minions if he wants to. He can stick 5 into the face. He can play an Adept, and he can do even more if he wants to with the rest of his hand. There's the analysis of this turn. Yeah, just having an ordering issue there for a second, but now he's good. And this has given him, again, the license to just push as much as he wants, because he's now got the extra skull for next turn. And Demon Hunter just throwing damage at the opponent. 5 armor back though. And after this skull, Brox will be in a worse position. Or maybe you don't do it now. You want to skull into Altruis in the perfect world here, I think. But he needs to develop, so he can't mess around any longer. Wow. Decision of whether you just want to play Kane. If you do, maybe you do. Maybe you just do. Taking away Altruis options if you play it, you're just getting 2 extra damage through it immediately, given that you would get 1 from the hero power, and you're getting 3 from the Kane. And it's starting to slip away from you because of that battle rage. So even though it's a bit risky to put the Kane down now and risk just getting wiped out, I think you kind of have to do it. See if Brox agrees. He does agree. Okay, this is nice. Gets rid of Shield Slam to some degree as well, taking away all the armour. Another reason to be doing it. But he hasn't got any follow-up. Does have that Spectral Sight that might enable him to find these last pieces of damage. Altruis certainly looks like it would be able to finish a game from this point. I mean, Altruis finishes a game from any point, but the hand is set up so we think that would work right now. And by we, I mean me. Wow, Fr0zen launching a 50-50 and losing it. So now he's got to go with a sword and board. Oof. And that's the hand decimated. So Brox, do your thing. Huh. Yeah, he doesn't want an I-beam, so he's got to do it this way. This makes sense. What you got to give him an Altruis? We can't see, of course. One of the few things that hasn't been perfect about this production. There haven't been many at all. We can't see the discovers a lot of the time. There we go. Huh. I think you take the Metamorphosis and hope you get there. If he wants to play Shadow Weaver into Shadow Weaver, I entirely understand though. Warriors are happy with their weapons. But 10 damage from hand when you've got your opponent this low. Tune in next week to find out. Okay, well he's just seen the brawl, so it seems a decent time to go wide. Also seems a really good time to pick up your Deathwing if you're Fr0zen. Yeah, that killed those minions. Watch all those -11s and things there. He did go for the Metamorphosis. Getting all the damage in, not even missing the one, which I've seen people do. Now what do? You tanking 12 and freezing the face? Or do you think that 2 damage is really important to go into the face yourself? But then you have to freeze the 12 one. You can just I-beam it, stick everything face. What's the issue with that? That's what I would want to be. Freeze face. Because you can't do both, so you can't I-beam it. So it is back to what I was saying originally. Are you freezing it or are you not? So you're taking the chance he doesn't have a weapon, which you think he doesn't, because he hasn't played a weapon for a while. And Brock's showing to me why he's been getting these good results. He takes his time, he makes logical decisions, he goes with what he thinks is happening, and he has a good strike rate of being correct on those thoughts. Really enjoying this game of Hearthstone. Fr0zen has just trod the fine line very carefully all through this. Picking up the Dragon Queen I think was absolutely key there. I feel like he was just done if he didn't get it. Or one of the other million ways that he probably has to deal with the board. This time he can do everything he wants to. 7 more to the face. But now the armour's coming faster than Brox is drawing cards. He's had both skulls, remember. He's only got 4 cards left in his deck at this point. One of which is Altruist, which is heartbreaking for Brox. He must wonder if he's done anything wrong here. I don't think he has. Sorry. To be clear, I think every Hearthstone player ever always does things wrong. That's just, otherwise we'd be playing perfect games. But he's made sensible decisions and everything's looked good to me. And he's still on the edge of winning this. Like, if Altruist is the top card, then next turn Brox does have the damage available to win the game. Depending what Fr0zen does. I'm trying to think what the other cards would be, but I am drawing a bit of a blank. I think we've seen both Adepts. I think we've seen all the weapons. See the Shadow Weaver. Yeah, we'll work it out. Second I-beam or something nondescript, most likely. But Fr0zen knows what's left. That's the important thing. So he can base his decisions on almost exact math. He can probably work out what's roughly in hand. Oh! And Brox can't look. I can look. Fr0zen does win the brawl. Brox nods his approval, and of course he picks up Altruist. Why wouldn't you pick it up in this position? Yep, you have to use all the slices you can. Get the exact damage you can in. And he's celebrating again. I think that was a celebration. I don't think he knows whether he's celebrating or not. But the Prime, gain 10 armour. Fr0zen now knows it is done. Goes to 2-all. We're going to final game. We don't see that many 3-2s, at least so far, in the Gold Team Championship. But we're going to see one today. Oh, there was a weapon left. Okay, so there's a lot of outs. Fr0zen's play last turn makes a lot more sense. It made sense at the time. Yeah. And now what do you do? So he's looking at his deck list. Fr0zen's looking at the deck list. They both know what's left. It's down to 10. What could it be? We're just going to have to wait and see, I feel. It looks like there's a questing in Brox's deck, and I don't think we've seen that because I would have commented. So that was another card he'd been waiting on. Another reason he was saving the I-beam. Okay, there it is. Got there just in time. Would have been helpful information for you earlier, I know. I do look through the deck lists before every cast. Sometimes one gets by me. And that questing would have been so useful so much earlier. But Fr0zen levels the scores for Team Liquid in this pretty important match. Both teams looking to avoid going 1 and 3. Mage versus Controlling Warrior. Could still be a long one. But let's have a look through this Mage deck. So it's 1,000,000 cards with amusing translations. But it looks normal. There is a polymorph in there. Yes, there is. And all the rest just makes sense to me. So first, Brox has got to work out who is the aggro in this one. I'm sure he already knows. So what I should have said is I need to work out who is the aggro in this one. Feels to me like it's the mage. The warrior just wants to run you out of things. Play a Lysiana. And this could go a while. Mage will want to use those minions. Will want to get a good puzzle box at some point. I think this is a matchup where you legitimately will be wondering about that. But also Deep Freeze strikes me as a card you would really like in this match. The second you start getting those water elementals doing their thing. And yes, Solarian, just an amazing card. One of the ways to generate a board if you can get the prime. So I think he'll be very happy with his hand. Obviously the Mana Saber is pretty important too. Just allows you that jump, which allows you to get to Cartoot Defender or better. Not that there's any pressure on Fr0zen really, but that prime is a big deal. There's a puzzle box, so I think we're pretty much guaranteed either a mage win or a puzzle box attempt at this point, and that's why people play the card. Because if you're not winning, you get a chance to be winning. You'll have to watch a box go off. Apart from maybe Bunny Hopper. So Fr0zen needs to develop a plan as to how he's going to stop this damage from slowly but surely reducing his health. What does he need to get to sort of counter this damage? Can't afford to get his 4/4 polymorphed. Needs that prime in his deck for that armor later on. And it's getting to the point where he can't empty his hand. He has 9 cards now, I think. So we will just see him preload the weapon just to make space. It's a Pilgrim. These 8 drops are massive against control decks. First, the small business of whether to play your Cartoot this turn. I don't see why you wouldn't. And also, I guess, whether you want to trade or not. But no one's brawling this board. The brawl's being saved until well after an Alexstrasza or a box or something nasty happens. No one's brawling away 2/3 attack minions. Wow. Brox certainly takes his time, and again, that's not something I'm sad about. Decides to keep the Mana Saber back, so maybe he's looking to ramp into the 8-drop Pilgrim, obviously. Could have a massive swing. If he does do that, he can play the Cartoot naturally next turn. And on 7 he can play the Pilgrim. Plenty of good things can come of that. There aren't actually that many spells in the deck. So getting to discover one should get him a good one, although obviously Box is in hand. But there's still Deep Freeze. And yeah, it might freeze your minions, but you get those 2 water lilies. And even worst case, there's stuff like Arcane Intellect and such like. Which card do you want to throw away, Fr0zen? Yeah, this is a mixed blessing for Brox, because obviously he wants to see the warrior struggling to do things, but he doesn't want the opponent to have 9 cards that are all really good, which is obviously an issue Fr0zen's having. Every turn's interesting to me for this. Brox has clearly decided that even though he's got to get it done, he's in no hurry. In both aspects of the word. Taking his time to think it through, make sure he's staying on whatever his game plan is. But also, the game plan, yeah, is just fill up the hand. I'm starting to see where he's going with it a lot more clearly now. He's not going to tempo anybody down. He's just going to chill. I think we'll see this Twilight Drake next turn, because it's... Why wouldn't you? But he's not in any hurry to get his stuff blown up. I don't believe he's the control deck, otherwise Fr0zen would surely have been playing minions before now. We'll see. Swampoos. And this is why he plays with his hands off the mouse. Because I think your first instinct is to go, yeah! Swampoos! Bosh! But there's a lot of choices this turn. You get to polymorph your opponent's prime out of sight. And that's so much damage you're actually doing. Yeah, and the shuffle forward as well, partly because he wants to use his mouse, I guess. But also because he's just made a big stride towards winning this game. And that came from Fr0zen not really having anything to target. Brox didn't give him anything to target. He just kept one stealth minion there, which has allowed Fr0zen to have to get stuck with Sword and Board and all those cards. And the ramming speed, he couldn't use them. They were stuck. So he ended up throwing out the minion, and that just got polymorphed, and it's given Brox a strategical edge. See, now this is what would have happened. The cards are different, but the result is what I'm talking about. If Brox had done what I was going to do and start attacking earlier. But no, he was just messing up Fr0zen's hand. Can just call him reasonable rolls. Not spectacular, obviously, with a 3-6 there. But they'll do. Sip of water. Usually a sign a player is in a very good space. It's one of the weird subconscious things I've noticed over the years. Players who are winning or who have won are much more likely to take a drink. And yeah, Fr0zen just killing everything now, but Brox has got more where that lot came from. So, as much as he would have liked to have played the Twilight Drake there, it would have been out there on its own and he wouldn't have had anything to do with the remaining 5 mana. Whereas if he wants to play the Drake next turn, he gets to play Kartuk Defender alongside it and not waste any mana and resources. Yeah, that Alex Strauss is well and truly blown off the board. And so now he's used up the opposing removal. Now he's managed to get something out of Fr0zen. Now he's managed to get Fr0zen to use up a large amount of removal. We know there's a lot more to come. Now he can start making these boards. And it's going to be turn after turn after turn. If Fr0zen deals with this board, Brox becomes Box. And we might see nothing here. I'm on board with how he's playing it. Hit you for 7, ping you, you'll go. What are you going to do? I can do 7s for a few more turns and you are in trouble. Want to get a minion out there? What do I play? Well, Siamat's just asking you to brawl me. Reno's just wasting a card. You definitely don't want to play a card that only attacks you the turn it comes into play, like Rusty Raider. You don't really want to use any of these cards. You're not in a hurry. I'm very interested to see if he just does the 8 and waits for another turn, or if he thinks maybe it's a little more urgent than that, because as you go on, the warrior does get towards that Alex Straz, does get towards that Zephyrus. Okay, so this kind of splits the difference. Because he's gone for the aggressive Siamat. If there is a brawl and he wins it, it's a 1 in 3 chance to win. The 12 damage will likely be enough to put him in a very strong position. Cartoons, of course, will come back. With the high undercards not active here for Fr0zen, he's once again having to use cards he has saved up for a while to deal with a board, and once again is emptying his hand to do so. But look at the armor go up. He's used so many resources. 2 of the cards in his hand basically do nothing right now. Reno does trigger the armor smiths, what, 2 times 7, 14 times. You're not going to get a better box board. You're not going to get a better Reno board. You're not going to get many better Rusty Raider boards. You're not going to get many better Rolling Fireball boards either. Oh, Brox, good luck choosing this one. It is hard to make a play that feels like you made a bad play here, but what's the best play? When do you want to Conjurer's Calling? On a bigger minion as possible. You want to do it on an empty board. If you play the Reno, you're giving your opponent so much armor, but you do get some board and you have seen him struggle. So yeah, going for the least route, or least armoured route there is, and I like, obviously, this. Given the monologue you just heard from me about stupid amounts of armour could be too much. So preventing that from ever happening, and now using the Reno, so using some cards to... Well, how much damage was effectively done there by not just throwing out a Reno? 2 armour was gained instead of, what did I say, 14? So yeah, 1 card, 12 damage. Seems good to me. Fr0zen with no real play. What do you think's there, Brox? Brox has been very, very good at these judgment calls. Conjurer's Calling on the Reno feels good. He will know better than me exactly how good 7 drops are, but I think they're pretty good. You're probably never going to get a better target. And there's the sense there's no brawl there too. Goes for the Twilight Drake, and he gets Dragon's Bane, which should do an extra 5 damage if I'm half with the program. Yep. But the weird bot that turns everything into 3/3s has scuppered a good roll there. Still, that's put Fr0zen back to a sensible amount of health, and he's back in this build-up that we've seen this happen a couple of times. He has turns where he clears everything, and then he waits for 2 or 3 turns, rebuilds the remove in his hand, then does it all again. Meanwhile, Brox is treading the 3 minion line very well. It's usually an optimal number against brawls. It has been historically. And that's because it kind of forces a brawl, but you don't lose much. It's 2 minions, you don't really force it. 4 minions, you lose a bit much. And again, it's like anything in Hearthstone, it's a rule of thumb. Rules of thumb don't necessarily always hold. But still, another 11 going in. And we're once again in a position where Fr0zen needs to take action. It's starting to get to the point where it's more than needs, where it could just be lethal if he doesn't. So gets the brawl. But he needs to put something in between the bot and the Reno to preserve it, so that was okay. And here is Mr. Solarian Prime to you. But Brox waiting off. Feels it might have more use later. Might not be much later, actually. Fr0zen just not able to get these Highlander cards active. This is a very, very greedy build. Brox just pushing all the damage now. Just going to try and get as close as he can to victory before using his prime. I don't know about you lot, but I am excited. Liquid going 1 and 3 would be devastating for them. I think players in general, and I don't know if these don't, they probably don't because Fr0zen is active on the Chinese scene, but players in general do tend to underestimate any scene that they don't have a lot of contact with, and we don't have a lot of contact with the Chinese scene. Although again, Purple and Bunny Hopper are both professional enough not to underestimate anybody. But from 1 and 3, they're not going to be at all comfortable for a couple of weeks. Fr0zen manufacturing some armour to stay alive. Okay, Brox. Which one? I think I prefer Alexstrasza on this particular turn. You know your opponent's really struggling for things. But if he slams his own Alexstrasza, you might need your prime to remove some stuff. I think this is correct. What, Morozond and Deathwing? Well, your opponent played a card you definitely don't want to copy in the Bladestorm last turn, so you can't really play Morozond now, but you can play it later alongside a prime to clear up a board if say Fr0zen does get Alexstrasza activated on probably his last go right now. Not active. Nothing to discover of any use. 14 available for Brox, and that's before he even thinks about what else he'd like to do. Now I want to see the prime because it could just be lethal. He has just run Fr0zen out of value from start to finish here. Fr0zen had only 8 cards and hasn't been able to do anything. Probably a little unfortunate that he hasn't got the Highlander activated, but not that unfortunate. The deck just hasn't looked like it can stand up at all. And Brox's expert looking piloting is going to take Suning to 2-2 by the look of it, unless Fr0zen's desperate digging. It doesn't. Brox gets the win. A little fist pump there. Daddy's not fist pumping with that axe. And Suning go to 2-2. What a superb game of Hearthstone from Brox there.